August 1st City of Boulder Planning Board meeting. We have everybody here, which is totally great. So the first order of business for us tonight is the approval of minutes, and we don't have any, so it'll be super fast. After that, we've got the opportunity for public participation, and this is when folks who are interested in addressing the board can speak to us about things that are not on our agenda tonight. So the thing that's on our agenda is agenda item 5A, which is a review of the open space master plan. So if you want to speak to us about that, then there'll be a chance to come and do that when that item comes up. Has anybody signed up for open comments so far?
Mm-hmm. Just one.
Just one? Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, Sharisa Poteet, you're up. You know the routine, you got to give your name and address, and then you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Sharisa Poteet, and I live in the Ponderosa Mobile Home Park. I'm glad to see you all here. Those of you that were not here last week, I encourage you to go look at I spoke last week too. There's so many issues, so please do that. I would ask that you please reject the Ponderosa Mobile Home Development Plan. There are many problems with it, and it's not fair to Boulder's poorest residents. They're being offered half the value of their trailers. I've got a copy of the daily camera today's. Under mobile homes for sale, we've got San Lazaro, number 182, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, for $86,900. Got one at Skylark Mobile Home Park, 2-bedroom, 1-bath for $80,000. We've got a 1974 3-bedroom, 2-bath, asking price $85,900. A 1975 2-bedroom, 2-bath with carport for $59,600. We're getting offered way below market value for homes in Boulder, Colorado. I'd like to read or quote from the Bill of Rights of America, Amendment number 5, to be not deprived of liberty, life, or property, nor shall private property be taken from the public for public use without just compensation. Please reject the plan. I think we can do a lot better. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Sharisa.
Thank you.
If anyone else wants to speak to us before we kick off the next item, now's the time. It looks like everybody else is here for other stuff. So we've got two discussions, two co-ops in front of us tonight. One is for a combination of a tract and a parcel on Crest Court, and the second one is a rerouting of the Mesa Trail, which is really in front of us for a wetland permit. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts on that? John?
Yeah, I was just hoping that somebody...
I think your mic is not on.
I'm hoping that somebody can answer just a quick question I have about the Crest Court application.
Shannon Muller's here to answer.
Right. So I was trying to understand how the history of this, that there's a portion of land that's not platted next to a lot that is, and I just didn't understand how that came to be.
Yeah, I was trying to look into that a little bit. It looks like back in the 1960s, when most of the lots in this area were platted, there was several subdivisions being platted around the same time. The subdivision this lot's in and the subdivision kind of to the south were platted a few years apart, and there was kind of this leftover piece that was never platted. And this tract that is getting combined with this lot was a portion of that sort of leftover tract.
So it's not clear whether it was intentional or just a function of careless surveying or what the history of that?
It's not clear, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. I don't intend to call it up, but I just had to inquire. Thanks.
Yep.
Great, thanks. Other questions, David?
I just wanted to point out to the board that I sent a couple of questions out, and Kristen Shepard got back to me with answers to those questions, and they just concerned the public access to the trail during the portion that's being rerouted, and there won't be any disruption. So I just wanted to let people know that in case they hadn't seen the email.
Thank you, David. Any other comments or thoughts? Great. Okay, we'll move to our first agenda item for the night, or our public hearing item for the night, which is recommendation to City Council for acceptance or not of the Open Space and Mountain Parks Master Plan. And a second motion, which would be the action on proposed amendment to the Boulder Valley Comp Plan, Open Space and Mountain Parks Master Plan Summary. The way that this will work is we'll start off with a presentation by staff. Planning Board will be able to ask staff questions after that. Then I'll have public testimony if anyone wants to speak to this item. It's a good time to sign up. And then we'll return them out of the board for deliberations. Chris?
Great. Thank you so much. Good evening. Chris Ranglos is going to begin the presentation, and he is the master plan coordinator for the city. And then we've got several open space staff members that will present. So I'm going to slide out of the way and hand it off to Chris.
Welcome, Open Space guys. I know you haven't spent enough time in this room in the past 24 hours.
You heard. Great, so I'll start by introducing myself again. Chris Ranglos, Comprehensive Planning, and like Chris had mentioned, I coordinate and support all the city's department master plans. Sitting next to me here tonight are just a few of the many OSMP staff members that had a vital role in the development of this master plan. So I would like to take the opportunity for them to introduce themselves, and Mark, at the end here, would also like just to give the board a few opening remarks for the master plan.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, board. My name is Mark Davison. I'm the Community Connections and Partnerships Manager for Open Space and also the sponsor for the master plan. Sitting next to me is Darren Wagner. She is the Senior Planner for Open Space and has been the project manager over the last 2 years working on this master plan. I'd also like to acknowledge a couple of folk in the audience. We have Dan Burke, our Interim Director for Open Space, and Tom Isaacson, the Board Chair for Open. Basically, the master plan, like I said, it's been about 2 years in the making. We originally had a project management plan that went to City Council for approval. As part of that effort, we adopted the strategic engagement framework to pilot how we would engage with the community over the last 2 years, which ended up being about 5 engagement windows. Something from sort of staff perspective is this master plan set out with open space, and we've got many divergent opinions out there. It is a pretty complex system to have an open space attached to an urban area. And throughout that process, we started to realize that it really could be a unifying effort, and we've seen with the community, our board, the city council, and staff, it really has brought us all together, and we feel like the master plan is a representative of all of the political, the board as volunteers, the staff, the community coming together. And even the mayor commented, probably at our second engagement meeting, that sense of unity that's being created through the planning effort. And that's been very rewarding, not just for the creation of a master plan, but as a planning team working on a project like this. In terms of setting out on the master plan, we built a foundation of knowledge. That's part of the sort of strategic engagement framework now to say, how do you share knowledge with the community so you can have informed decision making? So Darren here has a system overview report, is that correct? It's this little report here, it's available online, but that really describes the system, and it's set up a sort of summary of all the plans we've done previously, including like the grassland plan, the forest plan, our visitor use master plan. It also, obviously, as we set out in the process, we're guided by the Boulder Valley Comp Plan, and that's been a really good framework to keep us on track, provide some sideboards as we go through this process. And then ultimately, from the system overview report, we developed what we called focus areas, 5 focus areas. They went to City Council, and they actually approved them as an interim step in the master plan. By getting them approved, those 5 focus areas, which focused on our ecosystem, recreation, education and inclusion, our agricultural lands, and our financial sustainability, it allowed us to then focus in on what we called outcomes and strategies. The outcomes being, what are the scenarios of what we'd like open space to look like in the next 10 years and beyond, and then the strategies being how we implement the plan, including examples of actions of how that'll go through. So ultimately, what you're seeing tonight, and Darren's going to get into more detail on this, is what we feel is a unified 10-year vision. We do feel like it really will guide our work planning as well as our CIP and in fact, how we even think about open space over the next 10 years. And there is some serious challenges facing us, like the climate crisis, like how we manage our large habitat blocks, how do we manage increasing visitation. But we've also had a lot of success over the last 50 to 100 years in managing the system, and we've been able to pull that through from our previous planning efforts. So we think there is a lot of optimism in the plan, but recognizing we have to have this sort of realistic approach. And with that, I'm going to pass you over to Darren to take it away, and Chris.
Sounds good. So just to run through the agenda here, we'll kick off the staff presentation, give you guys some background info and the analysis that we did with alignment with the comprehensive plan. Any clarifying questions that you, the board, may have, we'll be happy to answer, hold a public hearing, and then we'll move into deliberation. So just some background information on the city master planning process. There's really 3 key issues, and this is the way that your memo was organized, that are the topic of discussion tonight. So the first one is the master plan consistent with the goals, policies, and growth projections of the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan? The second is, does the master plan outline the BVCP service standards and a plan to meet those in the future? And lastly, are the capital needs and funded sources outlined in the master plan? Now, I want to point out the image to the right that you guys see, and really what it does is it demonstrates the relationship between the community sustainability framework, the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, department master plans, the capital improvement program, and the operating budget. That's a mouthful, but you can see how the department master plan is sandwiched in this process. They play a key role in achieving the community vision set forth through the Community Sustainability Framework and the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, and they also help to inform the capital improvement program and the operating budget as well. So planning board's role specifically, most of you probably are aware of the City Plans and Projects Handbook, and if you're not, essentially what this is, it's a handbook that describes the city's process for master planning and capital planning. The figure to the right shows the general phases that are outlined in this handbook, and you can see where we are tonight is master planning, which is the first step. This includes the highest amount of community dialogue to identify policies and projects, though projects that are identified at this stage are really quite conceptual in nature. Now, planning board does play a key role in this process by providing a recommendation to city council for acceptance of the city master plan, which is what we're here tonight to do. And then lastly, as mentioned before, the board looks at these plans through the lens of the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan policies. So with that, I'm gonna kick it back over to Darren. She's gonna give you guys some background information on the master planning process, how we kicked it off, where we are now, and the processes that took place in between those times.
Fabulous. Thank you, Chris. And hi, once again, Darren Wagner with OSMP. And thank you for letting us come in front of you tonight. I know that you don't typically get to talk about such a wonderful thing. Perhaps we, let me say that differently, sorry.
You just hurt the transportation guys' feelings. They were here last night.
We are so excited to be here because we have actually worked so deeply with our community to talk about our shared values and why we get so excited about open space. So we have, as Mark said, generated a lot of optimism and creativity in the process. And we showed images like this in the beginning of our process that start to give an overview of what we're all about, which is, as you well know, we have 45,000 acres of open space. We have been protecting that for the last 120 years. We have about 15,000 acres that we lease to farmers and ranchers. We protect or support over 700 species of native plants, over 300 species of native birds, as well as a host of other native amphibians, reptiles, et cetera. We have over 150 miles of trails, and we really offer deep connections with nature. And it really has, as we've kind of come through the process, have heard phrases like, this is what makes Boulder Boulder. And it's been a meaningful place to start with some images like this and some conversations around our shared values. And so as Mark mentioned, we started out this process as a pilot for the Engagement Strategic Framework. And you probably well know the shape of that wheel where the 9 steps are identified about how to go through the process. And we were really guided by our process committee, in this case, to both design the process and go through it. And in our case, we were lucky to have 2 council members, Aaron Brockett and Mary Young, as well as 2 members of the Open Space Board of Trustees, Tom Isaacson, who Mark pointed out, who's in the audience, as well as Kurt Brown. I also wanted to point out that since our introduction, another one of our board members has come, and Karen Holwig is in the audience, and she too was here till about 1 in the morning. So thank you for coming back, Karen. So as we designed the process with guidance from the process committee and also from, as Mark mentioned, our full board and full council, we developed this project management plan, which really laid out our intentions, both from a process, planning and dialogue standpoint, as well as a community engagement process. And from there, we affirmed the importance of this foundation of information, and that's where this 200-page document system overview came from. And it was really an important conversation about this being an opportunity, as we perhaps haven't had in the past, to share a lot of wonderful information about our system, because we don't often get the opportunity to talk about our entire portfolio of assets and services, from education, from volunteerism, from trail maintenance, to trail building, to agriculture, et cetera. And so it was a really nice place to start the conversation. And then throughout the process, as Mark indicated, we designed these windows of engagement where we were clear about, okay, we're ready to open public dialogue, and then clear about when we would close it so that we could analyze and incorporate that feedback. And at each stage in the process, we worked with our process committee with worksheets like this, where we were really clear in trying to define our objectives and our approaches to going through that particular window. And what that resulted in about 18 or so months is more than 10,000 public comments. And some of those came in through the 9 community events that we held, which brought over 900 attendees. Some of those came in through engagement that we did with members of underrepresented communities who typically aren't participating in planning processes. And in that case, we called those micro engagements, where we really reached out to these communities in ways that we hadn't in the past, where we went to not just trailheads, but also libraries and senior centers and parks and other places where people are in order to try and understand their values and what is important to them about open space. We also worked with our process committee, board, and eventually council to design a statistically valid survey to understand what we had initially set out to do at the very beginning as we were working on our project management plan, which was to try and understand some of the hard questions that we knew the master plan needed to tackle. And so we, through that process, got over 1,300 responses to the mailed version of that survey, as well as 2,300 responses to the online paired version of that survey. And as we've been indicating, we started this process from a values-based approach and asked questions like, what is important to you about open space? Why do you love it? What does that mean to you? What are your hopes for the future? What are your concerns for the future? And we did that, as I was mentioning, in lots of creative ways, where we were asking people to draw us pictures or write on a whiteboard. We had worksheets that they filled out. And we were really hearing a lot of alignment in that process, where no matter sort of where you were from backgrounds, perspectives, opinions, a lot of shared opinions about how open space brings us all together. That it is something that means something not just for us today, but for the future. And we use that process to clarify what those value statements are in ways that pull through the city charter. In 1986, voters amended the city charter to define the purposes for open space. And those are our guiding foundational policy approach for managing the department. We pulled those through into this process and reaffirmed them. And it was really a wonderful sort of demonstration of how enduring those values are and what that means to us going forward. And then that conversation led to the development of these focus areas. And as Mark was indicating, we see this as an interconnected, complete set of guidance for the next decade, where we establish these 5 somewhat independent themes, as well as throughout the process talked about the ways they integrate with each other and support each other. And so just to spell them out, once again, ecosystem health and resilience became a very central theme in a lot of ways. Again, this is sort of what makes Boulder Boulder. It's the foundation that we always start with. Responsible recreation, stewardship, and enjoyment is another focus area where we talk about how we're united around our enjoyment and obligation to protect nature. Agriculture today and tomorrow was an important concept that our board and council brought forward in the process of affirming the focus areas themselves. We previously, in engagement, hadn't heard quite as much emphasis around that, but board and council felt like because that is a charter purpose, that we ought to bring that into the fold so that we can integrate and prioritize across our full portfolio of services. And then community connection, education, and inclusion. That was another one where we heard loudly and clearly the importance of education, as well as equity and inclusion. And so that in and of itself became an important conversation. The last, financial sustainability, we really see that as being overarching. It's supportive of all of the other focus areas, and it starts to talk about needs around stabilizing funding. But it also captures our strategies and outcomes around acquisitions and what that's going to look like in the future. And so in part, that's where we also align with the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan in terms of where we would prioritize those going forward. So from there, we moved into these conversations around, okay, within these focus areas, what are the outcomes? What are our aspirations for the next decade? What is the vision that we want to create for ourselves? And that was prompted throughout the process with continuing to bring the system overview report and other data and information through, where we were able to contextualize the fact that, the climate crisis, for example, is a global challenge that we need to tackle here. Visitation is growing. We know that both from a growth projection standpoint in the comp plan, as well as from our visitation on the system itself. And started to identify and talk about those pressure points, as well as the outcome or the opportunities around enhancing our equity and inclusion efforts, building off of the youth engagement that we've done over the years. And then how are we going to achieve those? And we built a series of strategies to try and set ourselves up for the next decade. We then moved into, okay, how do we prioritize that? We know that master plans are required to be fiscally constrained. And so we developed a set of financial scenarios that we'll talk about in a minute. And that allowed us to anticipate the various funding levels that we may or may not see over the next decade so that we can set manageable expectations. And then we started to talk about what this means going forward. What is, as Chris mentioned, it's still conceptual at the master plan level, but what can we start to anticipate that we need to get to work on, especially in the near term? Things like climate resilience and soil health projects around carbon sequestration, trail maintenance backlog that we want to get, continue to make progress towards. What are the real actions that are coming out of this guidance? So that process then is reflected in the document outline, and hopefully you've had a chance to move through this, so I probably don't need to spend too much time here, but it's really, we've been trying to build an iterative process that when we released the first draft for the public to review in May, we wanted and felt like it wasn't going to be new to the public because we'd been building it along the way with everybody engaged. As part of that, we did work closely with council and had monthly meetings with our process committee, as well as 2 joint study sessions with council on our board of trustees, where in the first one in June of 2018, we talked about those focus areas, and then soon thereafter, council approved them. The second joint study session that we just held recently in June was then talking about the outcome strategies and priorities that are reflected in the master plan itself. And the feedback that we've heard from council, especially in the most recent engagement, the themes revolve around the importance of large habitat block protection, the importance of the global climate crisis, and wanting to align around council's priorities that they've recently affirmed in their recent resolution, the importance of agriculture and what that's going to look like in the future, addressing our increasing visitation and the related impacts and opportunities, as well as, again, around inclusion, equity, and youth engagement. Same as it relates to our Open Space Board of Trustees, where we met monthly with them as part of the process committee, as well as through our ongoing board meetings. And really, in total, we've, as of last night, estimated that that's a total of about more than 340 hours of deliberation that we've been grateful to have the benefit of from our trustees, and that doesn't include outside review time and phone calls. So again, thanks to everybody. And feedback last night that we heard from our board. We are lucky to report that we received unanimous approval or recommendation to City Council. We heard the need to clarify what the global climate crisis means specifically for OSMP a little bit more in terms of both our role in addressing that and what that means for the larger city, region, and beyond, as well as the real tangible aspect, the real tangible projects that we can start to anticipate. We did talk through refinements to the strategy, what we're calling handles, the name of the strategy, the policy direction that's in there, and that we heard some adjustments to our priorities, where we moved one from Tier 2 up to Tier 1. So that is our strategy within agriculture today and tomorrow around reducing conflicts between agriculture and prairie dogs. And another was moved from Tier 2 up to from Tier 3 up to Tier 2, and that was one around the importance of science and how we apply that science and inspire engagement with our community moving forward. And then we also heard, the acquisitions, while it's a part of that financial sustainability focus area, that it's still somewhat hard to find in the document, and so how do we kind of call that out in a section and make that clear? So that is 5 bullets summarizing 6 hours of deliberation. So we recognize it's high level, but I want to reiterate by saying that we did close the evening with a motion that supported all of the clarifications and refinements that were made through the night, and again, received unanimous approval for that. And so I'm happy to report that, and again, thanks to everybody.
Great. So key issue number 1 out of the 3 that we want to talk about tonight in particular is the master plan consistent with the goals, policies, and growth projections of the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan. Now, I do want to note that none of the strategies conflict, none of the strategies or focus areas, I should say, conflict with the BVCP. It's rather that some have stronger alignment than others where the BVCP does not necessarily provide specific guidance on that topic, and that's something that we should probably expect. So for the focus area, ecosystem health and resilience, staff finds that there's full alignment with a shared sense of stewardship and commitment to preserve and restore ecological health in a changing climate. For the focus area of agriculture today and tomorrow, there's strong alignment with shared support for sustainable local agriculture, soil health, food system resilience, and access to healthy foods. For responsible recreation, stewardship, and enjoyment, we find medium alignment with shared commitment to honoring the unique community identity, including providing welcoming and inspiring visitor facilities and access to safe and enjoyable experiences on all OSMP lands. For community connection and education and inclusion, we find medium alignment with shared commitment to supporting volunteerism, engaging and connecting youth to the outdoors, welcoming diverse backgrounds and abilities, as well as improving health and well-being and cultivating leaders through stewardship. And last but not least, for the financial sustainability focus area, staff has found that there's medium alignment with shared support to preserve open space lands, including prioritizing acquisitions in the Boulder Valley Rural Preservation Area, Area 3, for those purposes. With that, I'm going to kick it back over to Darren, and she's going to run you through the next 2 key issues, and then I'll come back on.
So the next question being the extent to which we support the comprehensive plan through service standards and ways to meet those. In our case, we are lucky to have, as Mark indicated earlier, a set of more specific ecosystem management plans, as well as the visitor master plan and other documents that in the case of, say, our ecosystems, provide us about 80 indicators that help us track the health of our forest ecosystems and our ecosystem and our grassland ecosystem. So we have developed an integrated way of using those indicators through those plans, and we will, as we work forward on an annual and regular basis of reporting out our progress, report those in an integrated way, where we want to make sure that we are tracking progress towards achieving the outcomes that we design in the process and the extent to which we've been able to implement the strategies. The third question that is before you tonight is the extent to which capital needs and funded sources are outlined in the master plan. And so this is where I indicated we would describe our 3 financial scenarios in more depth. And so the first is a situation which we are in now, where we, starting next year, will see a planned $10 million reduction in our annual revenue. That's something that for the last 5 years we've been working towards, and to lessen the impact of that. What that means is that through the engagement process with the master plan, we've understood clearly from the community where we should generally prioritize our funding at all levels, but specifically in this constrained funding environment, that we would focus on maintenance as it relates to new acquisitions or new services and initiatives. And we heard that, for example, in the statistically valid survey and other engagement opportunities, where taking care of what we have is an important theme that community members shared. And we recognize that in this scenario, though we've been planning for it, that we still may need to anticipate in some areas of the system that conditions may decline. because it does reduce our capacity to fully meet the master plan vision. The next financial scenario is with the assumption that some of the sales tax revenue that we are losing may be restored. And it's in that case that we could scale up the work that we've heard is important for us to focus on from the community. So in other words, with additional money, we scale our efforts to those funding levels. So we would scale up conservation and restoration work. We would scale up trail maintenance work. And it gives us a little bit more room to be some more proactive around the climate crisis and around soil health and soil sequestration, as well as youth engagement and a number of other strategies that are important to the community. That full funding scenario is very typical. I think you would see this in all the other master plans that I know come before you in terms of what's typically called the vision plan, the vision scenario. And so that's the anticipation that we would have full funding available to achieve that 10-year vision of the master plan.
So the second part that we wanted to bring up tonight was there's two actions that we're taking tonight. One is the recommendation of the acceptance of the master plan to City Council, and the second is to approve the master plan summary that's in the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan. So Chapter 6 of the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan includes master plan summaries. Now, as far as how we go through this acceptance process for master plans, we also update those master plan summaries in the comp plan. It's largely a house cleaning item, but it is an amendment to the comprehensive plan. So that was included as attachment A to your guys' memo, and so we will ask for you guys to take action on that in particular. So where we've been and a few next steps. So the official approval process for a master plan has to go through a couple different steps. First is the Master Planning Coordination Committee, which is an internal committee. They have to approve that the plan is ready for board review. That happened on April 18th. July 31st, last night, I guess kind of into this morning, so maybe it should say August 1st, OSBT considered the final draft and recommended that to City Council. Tonight, August 1st, you guys will also be making a recommendation to City Council on the draft plan. September 3rd is when Council is going to be considering the final plan. And then throughout the fall and winter, staff will be working on providing a bit of a more illustrative plan document. The one that you see now is still in Word, and that's largely due to our ability to track changes and make edits in a more succinct and efficient way. But there will be a more illustrative plan document that'll come out later this fall and winter. Work plan integration, and then lastly, the 2020 annual budget approval process. So just to remind you, the two recommendations that we have tonight before you are a recommendation to City Council for the acceptance of the Open Space and Mountain Parks Master Plan, and two, approval of the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, Open Space and Mountain Parks Master Plan Summary. So with that, we would like to open it up to any clarifying questions that the board may have.
Great. Fantastic presentation. Thanks very much. So who has some questions for open space staff? Sarah?
Just some questions specific to the report. So I think it was page 45. There's a map of what grasslands and forest areas are feasible or not feasible for restoration. And I was just really curious why nearly all of the forest area is considered not, or a large portion of it is considered not feasible for restoration. And what are the implications of that?
Sure. So we are, as you know, in an environment with dramatic cliff sides, rocky outcroppings, in which case a lot of times that makes it hard for any forest thinning projects to be fully successful. So that's typically what constrains that work. We do, though, have guidance from a forest ecosystem management plan in the late 90s where it set out a series of ways to do as best we can, and we've achieved almost the entirety of those objectives. So we'll be looking to update that plan where we'll look to, again, what the implications are and making sure that we integrate climate crisis and other considerations into that. So hopefully.
Okay, thank you. I was curious about that.
Yep.
Other questions? David, then John?
Yes, will this master plan, once it's finalized, be in time for this year's CIP process, or will it be mostly informing next year?
So I also coordinate the CIP, so
Okay.
that's, you guys will see that in 2 weeks on August 15th. It has informed this year's capital improvement program already, and you'll see that the open space and mountain parks capital submission is going to be a little bit different than all of the other departments. We're figuring out how to best incorporate this master plan into the capital improvement program, so there is a bit of a difference, but it is certainly influencing the capital improvement program for this year, and it will continue to for several more years.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, first of all, congratulations on a nice piece of work. I think it's very good. Just some questions. There are several issues that have, some of which get a lot of public attention and some not, which it seems to me are not addressed here, and it would seem to me to be appropriate at least to mention them, if not to make final decisions on them. Included on those are issues related to, for example, preservation of habitat conservation areas and how the status of those with respect to future trail development and management of the lands in general. That's a fairly fundamental issue that it seems to me is appropriate to at least discuss in a document of this type. Secondly, there's a question with respect to agricultural lands, and we all have heard about the prairie dog problems and so on, but not to focus on prairie dogs, but to talk about in general how we expect to deal with the lands that are leased for agricultural purposes in the future, whether, for example, we intend to do some of the things that the county has been proceeding on with respect to use of GMOs and organic processes of various types.
Can you phrase these in forms of a question, perhaps?
Beg pardon?
We're still in questions, just in case you're,
Yeah, well,
if you're working up to a question.
Oh, all right. You can carry on with others, and I'll come back with some others.
No, I'm not trying to make you stop talking. I just wanted to see if you were asking them a question or if you were just making comments at this point.
Well, these can be considered as questions. My comments will come later.
Maybe you could stop after the first question and let them answer, and then.
Oh,
We're happy to answer if that's okay.
Yeah, that would be a good strategy.
Okay, so, all right, the first being the question around HCAs, or habitat conservation areas, and what that means for the future of trail development. So we have kind of a couple of ways of answering that. So we actually just had a discussion last night with our Board of Trustees, somewhat in relation to this. So I would start out by saying that we have, both in our ecosystem health and resilience focus area, we have strategies around reducing undesignated trails, as well as other impacts from human use. We then, in our responsible recreation, stewardship, and enjoyment focus area, also talk about the importance of trail maintenance, as well as building new trails in response to past and new plans. So what's happened through also the prioritization process is, again, this focus on taking care of what we have. And so last night we heard additional clarification from the board that as we think to building new trails, that we would focus first on those that have previously been committed to by approved plans by City Council, and that those that may come online later through the results of future design and planning processes, that those would then sort of have to get in line as it relates to available funding. But the emphasis would, in the first place, be on maintenance of existing trails. So I would offer that as one answer.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'll have comments about that later on. Then with respect to agricultural lands,
Sure.
There's these issues that I raised, and I just wondered you might like to respond to them also.
Sure. So we also have a recently approved agricultural resources management plan that really led to the development and articulation of this focus area, where the policy is in the master plan is in direct alignment with that particular plan. So that agriculture plan goes into a little bit more detail than the master plan does, arguably, because the master plan is sort of at a more conceptual level. But together, that set of guidance really does talk about trying to anticipate the future. So we have strategies in there around supporting ranchers and farmers, knowing that the next generation is going to be important to nurture and support. We also talk about integrating our native ecosystem approach to managing those areas with the importance of preserving agricultural productivity. And we start to anticipate the need to, within land where it's appropriate, to diversify our agricultural operations so that we can continue to support the local agricultural economy.
Okay, so that means you'll be addressing, and I don't want to talk about prairie dogs exclusively, but that's an example of the sort of issue that we have to deal with.
Certainly, and there's also a strategy directly on that also, where it captures the current commitment that staff is operating under now to address that in an expedited way. And so staff has been working on that with guidance from our Board of Trustees to do that in a condensed way, but it also tries to capture what that means for us over the next decade. And so there is a strategy on that as well.
And just in addition, we also include sort of prioritization of soil health for the bigger picture. How do we maintain soil health in the system or restore it? How do we look at supporting our ranchers and farmers? Because we realize that is a population that's been around for many generations. And how do we keep that continuity going, where they not only manage the land, but they manage the resource? And the other thing we've been looking at is water. We know coming out of the master plan, what's emerged is to really sort of identify our water portfolio better. And for the first time, we're looking at creating sort of a water management plan, and this came through the planning process that's a need for the department.
Thank you. One more.
Sure.
That is, with respect to the development of infrastructure, and this is related to trails, every once in a while you hear something about desire to establish picnic shelters and picnic tables and further development of infrastructure at trailheads and so on. And it's never been clear to me what your department's attitude has been towards that, because there's differing messages from time to time. And so I wondered if that's the sort of thing that you might be able to clarify in a master plan also.
Certainly, well, we certainly try to, and we start from a place of recognizing that our history involves some early facility development where, even hearkening back to Frederick Law Olmsted and his vision for this area and protecting the mountain parks, did involve some development of trails and vistas and facilities to support that use and enjoyment. And then recognizing that in some cases, those facilities are also aging. So again, we have a responsibility to maintain our existing infrastructure as it relates to that, as well as infrastructure that exists throughout the system in the Eastern Plains and elsewhere. We had a follow-up, we also have strategies around in our most important tier in terms of welcoming diverse backgrounds and abilities. And so as part of that, some of that does involve conversations about whether or not our facilities are, for example, accessible, which might require some adjustments to our facilities. And then again, we had a clarifying conversation with our board last night where we started to understand more clearly that we do want to, again, emphasize taking care of what we have, and also recognize that in the next 10 years, there may also be needs to add a particular infrastructure, whether that's a bathroom, as one example that came up last night, or interpretive signage that would support the visitor experience. So we, at the master plan level, because as Chris pointed out, it's still conceptual and not site-specific, we weren't making specific decisions to preclude the possibility of that need over the next decade.
And if I could just add, we mentioned the system overview report. Page 119 summarizes the passive recreation activities that the visitor master plan established were acceptable on open space. And that really summarized the types of activities. Mostly it's the hiking, the walking, photography, running, equestrian, bike use. But there's also things like photography, traditional climbing, cross-country skiing. These are sort of picnicking, the smaller activities. So we do look for facilities, obviously, to support those activities. An obvious one being trail as a facility to support, obviously, biking, walking. There is bathrooms, trailheads, parking, et cetera, other typical facilities. But what we want to emphasize is that light touch on the land we take, because we are an open space system. And for example, you mentioned picnic shelters. Darren mentioned we have a legacy system in the mountain parks that includes picnic shelters from the 1930s, developed by the National Park Service mostly. But mostly in our open space areas, we use picnic tables as a way to allow picnicking to occur. It's not typically a picnic shelter unless that's a legacy facility that came with us from before. So that's typically our approach, to take a light approach on the land, the light as possible, the most sustainable approach to support those passive recreation activities.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Sarah's got one, and Lupita.
Go ahead.
I think I really liked some of the chart that you prepare in terms of how well, for the first issue, and how well the document you plan aligns with the master plan for the Boulder Valley. And I noticed, I tend to look at where are we not doing so well to see if there's, is there anything that is being thought of or how to address. So, so just to give an example, when you're asking, for example, one of the criteria, see, I have several ones because I have notes on them. And I said, I'll just ask them if they have some sort of strategy for getting better in alignment. So, for example, on the responsible recreation, stewardship, and enjoyment strategy and how it aligns, that was under the figure 1.2. And there's one example, for example, where there's no alignment, where there's reduced trail maintenance backlog. And I was wondering, when you find those misalignment, were you guys thinking about what can we do to do something to get this alignment? Because the outcome was that there was no guidance in the master plan on how to reach that point. Were you guys having any discussions on how that can be brought out? Like thinking outside the box. I was thinking, well, maybe this is a good opportunity to, bring community and maybe even look at some of those other areas, for example, to get more community involvement and participating in some of this, maintenance. Maybe some of the lighter assignments or lighter maintenance jobs where it could become community building opportunities, and in particular, in terms of how do you engage the younger generations to really have a connection with the open space, which we have such beautiful, beautiful places outside, as well as with older people, but certainly with the younger generation. So I always just wanted to hear from you if you even have been thinking about those sort of things in terms of the things that you don't have any guidance. Do you have any opportunity to create some of your own, or maybe get feedback on how to create new things?
Thank you for the question. So I'll take a first stab, and then Chris, feel free to fill in. So where we identify places, as you bring up, where there is not, say, full alignment, what we see that is an opportunity to frame conversations in the update process for the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan. We've never had a departmental master plan in this way before, to be completely frank. So as it's come through, as we've been involved in previous updates of the BVCP, it's not been framed or supported by all the community conversations that have now gone into the master plan. So we're actually pretty excited that we're sort of ahead of the game in that way, where we feel like the master plan has filled in the gaps that you mentioned for our purposes now, but then it also sets us up, again, to talk about what that may mean and making sure that we capture that in the next comp plan update. But then some of the ideas that you were just mentioning are wonderful and beautiful. And I know that even, Mark works with our volunteer our program. We do a lot of service learning projects and so on. And I think you're capturing some wonderful ideas that, we try and discuss at a conceptual level in the master plan and have some strategies around. And the actions that you mentioned are pretty inspiring.
Oh, and it's a great, and just one example is, I think you're familiar with Bridge House, the nonprofit. And so we work with Bridge House along with Parks and Rec, we partner. And that created the Ready to Work program. So that allows folks who are with Bridge House to work with ourselves on really good projects, working with staff. And we also have a Ready to Work Light, which is like an intermediate program where people are preparing to be with Bridge House. So that's sort of a lighter work week, but it sets you up to go into the full program. And at one point, we were able to luckily hire one of the members of the Bridge House crew, who's now one of our staff members in the department. So there's a nice transition there and hopefully sort of long-term continuation with those types of programs. And as Darren and Chris pointed out, ultimately, this is our first master plan, so we're hoping some of the strategies can evolve into the Boulder Valley Comp Plan.
Sarah?
So I just would like to have you talk a little bit more in depth about the mechanisms you've captured in the plan to manage the increase in use. This is a big plan, and you all have done a great job, and I was having a bit of a hard time tracking what are some of the policies or projects that you have identified and what else you would like to do but may not have prioritized to manage or deal with this increase, and maybe talk a bit about how it does or doesn't track the city's growth projections.
Absolutely. So for those of you who may have a copy of the plan pulled up in front of you, the conversation in full starts on page 90, and it's absolutely, as you point out, an important pressure point that we've continued to deliberate on through the process. So the way that strategy is set up is to acknowledge, yes, as you say, that visitation has grown, and we know that in the last decade, it's grown on an average of 2 to 3% every year. And so that is something that we've tried to tackle as well as we can, because this is a master plan trying to capture, as I mentioned, all of our charter purposes and bring them all together under one umbrella. This was a particular conversation where even as of last night, board members were discussing the importance of making sure we have future conversations around this particular issue, because it brings up very strong feelings and important decisions that need to be made at a level of detail that we couldn't at this stage. So the way we've framed it with guidance from board and council is to say that we need to do sort of two things. One is continue to implement the past planning guidance that we have around visitor use management. And so we have a series of ongoing programs that, even involve leave no trace education. Where we try and help visitors understand, regardless of how many there are out there, but how do you behave and how do you help us take care of the land while you're there, so that we try and, in various ways, mitigate or limit the impacts of increasing use. We have off-trail restrictions and habitat conservation areas, where those are areas where we know we have relative emphasis in ecosystem protection. We have temporary area closures for wildlife during nesting season, for example. So we have a number of these kinds of projects that are ongoing programs and guidance to support that we acknowledge are increasingly important to continue, but then we also need to update components of our guidance around visitor use management to have more specific conversations around whether or not, for example, setting any kind of carrying capacity or visitation thresholds is an appropriate and feasible tool. We've had conversations with our board in probably most detail in terms of whether or not that really is feasible, depending on our landscape that's pretty porous, where it's difficult to, say, limit the number of people without any kind of physical barriers. So there's some real conversations that, again, even as of last night, our board was emphasizing the importance of using science to really understand that further, and then update any guidance around it as we move forward, but certainly important to address.
Can I just follow up a question? So RRSE-1, update and implement visitor use management guidance. Can you just unpack that a bit?
Sure, and I will admit that is one of the strategies that we were refining as of last night with the board. So the exact wording of that will look a little different in the next version. But the concept is essentially what I just described, where we say, okay, we have existing guidance already to continue addressing the impacts of increasing visitation. We don't have guidance to set numbers and to limit the amount of visitation. So we'll continue implementing what we do have, and with urgency and emphasis and importance, because it is in our tier 1 most important set of strategies. And then again, we need to update our guidance to understand whether or not setting visitation limits is important or is feasible, and talk about the other things too, to make sure that positive visitor experiences are maintained as visitation increases.
just add to Darren's comment? There's also, obviously, with that, the regional perspective. And recently, there's Northern Colorado, NOCO has emerged, which is Forest Service, national parks, the counties. And it's looking at the visitation increase across the Front Range and how we manage it as partners, as well as doing it individually as, a city. Because obviously, we affect each other in the way we manage visitation. So it's looking at ourselves, but also looking at that big picture. As Darren pointed out, it is a big effort and it is a big question. There isn't simple answers, so we know it's going to take a lot of effort.
I just have a tools question. So the two sort of buckets that you have brought up are protecting what's there and maybe a conversation about carrying capacity and visitation thresholds. But I'm wondering, are there other tools that might be sort of, let's say, financial tools that would be, fees or permits and I'm totally making this up and I'm sure this is not our remit, but I'm just sort of curious if you all have been thinking in those terms as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would point you to page 94, where we are representing some findings from that statistically valid survey, because we put forward a series of those potential management approaches and asked the community the extent to which they would support or oppose them. And so there are things that we're currently doing, again, around education for trail etiquette, where the program that started as a pilot at Chautauqua of providing public transportation to that trailhead as a partnership with the city, which is another approach. We are, we've asked a number of other questions in terms of whether separating uses by either day or by uses is an appropriate tool. And we saw in the survey around that particular one kind of mixed results on that. So for those options that got a lot of support, we made sure we followed through on those. So for example, we have a strategy in and of itself around encouraging multimodal transportation to our trailheads. For those where the results are slightly more mixed, we didn't feel like we had a clear mandate in the process to take a hard stance one way or another on it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from you guys? Okay, great. So before we see if there's public comment, I want to see if anybody from the Open Space Board of Trustees would like to come up and say hello to us. You guys are all here, so because you weren't up late enough last night. But, and this is not, you don't have to, but just want to give you an opportunity and also say thanks for showing up.
Thanks. Tom Isaacson, I'm the Open Space Board Chair. I mean, Darren did a very good job of walking through all of the, at a process level, that we were involved at every step, and practically almost every meeting for the last 2 years, we were either discussing master plan issues out of the board or receiving public comment, and often both. But I won't go through all of how we've been involved, but I think it is fair that we've been at every step of the way in designing the process, working through the draft, numerous drafts, and providing very detailed comments. But if I could, I wanted to answer, John, your first question in a little bit more detail about, because I think it's an incredibly important one, about new trails and trails in HCAs and the guidance here. So I wanted to, one of the important things, I don't know if this is true for other departments, but it's certainly true for us, because we have 9 other plans that are all council approved, and many of which are very, very detailed plans on all kinds of aspects. On 5 of them, the visitor master plan, and then 4 trail study area plans, all relate to how we manage trails in various parts of the system. The visitor master plan has quite a bit of detail on exactly what are the trail criteria for an HCA, which has the highest level of habitat protection, versus the other 3. We have 3 other management designations, natural areas, passive recreation areas, and agricultural areas. So a lot of the detail on how do we allow and where do we allow trails in HCAs has been already developed. And the master plan, true, it doesn't repeat all of those criteria and all of those guidance, but it does call out the importance of looking at the particular management area designation for any given piece of property and saying, you need to look at, well, is this an habitat conservation area, and then bring into the discussion all of the criteria that have been developed. And also, we already have trail study plans for it's either all of the HCA territory or virtually all of it, because the HCA's tend to be on the western, northern and southern sides of the system, which are the parts of the system that we've already done the trail plans for and identified where, trails are going to exist and where trails are not going to exist. And it also lays out the importance of the on-trail requirement that we have in HCA's, you're not allowed to go off-trail. And so I think there's a lot of other material specific to your question that has been developed and is sort of referenced in the master plan, but not repeated. But, okay.
Thank you.
For addressing that. Okay, so do we have anybody signed up for public comment on this? Nope. Okay, does anybody want to come speak to us about it? You could. Okay, I'll return them out of the board, and we can focus on these 3 key issues and see what our responses are. And I think just due to the broad nature of some of them, we could just use negative polling to see if we agree with the conclusions that staff and OSBT have come to. So key issue 1 is really, does the master plan, is it consistent with the goals, policies, and growth projections of the BVCP? Does anyone take issue with that as a conclusion?
Nope.
John?
I think it is consistent with the goals, policies, and growth projections. Although this isn't directly related to that key issue, I would just like to offer my comment, and that is that I appreciate Mr. Isaacson's thoughts on the topic of HCA's. My only concern is that the master plan could be a little bit more, say, specific and directed towards certain principles which in my opinion, might want to be adopted by, and may have been adopted by, open space and the board. And not to focus on HCA's, but that's an example of something that is in danger of death by 1,000 cuts. That's a term we've all heard before. That they're constantly under threat if great care isn't taken. And so it seems to me that that's an example of the sort of issue that might be called out in a master plan to make it very clear of their special status.
Great.
But beyond that, I think this is consistent. It's very clear to me.
Great. So key issue number 2, does the master plan outline BVCP service standards and a plan to meet them in the future? Negative polling again, so if you disagree, this is the time to speak up and say that you think that you have a different conclusion you'd like to reach. We good? Okay. And then key issue number 3, again, sort of negative polling, because this one seems like the most factual answer, are the capital needs and funded sources outlined in the master plan? Does anyone think that they aren't? Okay. I think that's really completing our key issues tonight. Does anyone want to add anything to that, or do they want to go ahead and make a motion potentially?
I'd like to add, I spent a lot of time getting ready for the meeting, and I just have some comments.
For sure. Yeah, so just to be fair, if anybody has comments that weren't captured in these 3 issues, this is the time to get them off your chest.
He did his homework.
Yeah, I mean, these may not affect the draft or anything like that, but they're, when I moved to Boulder, I was just blown away by the open space, and it's something so wonderfully unique to Boulder, and so I was really interested. And I actually put up the meeting from last night. I called in, and Megan Grunwald went and found me a link to the meeting, even though it's not up on the website yet, so that I could kind of play it while I was reading through. And I have to say, Thomas and Karen and the rest of the board, you really, really have a lot of attention to detail. And like they say, it went like over 6 hours. So it was amazing to just kind of like get an idea of how every word you guys were looking at. So, and I also was really happy to see that Andrea Billick made the motion, because she's rotating off the board. If it's okay, I'd like to, on behalf of Planning Board, kind of wish her well. I met her on e-bikes going to a community outreach event, and her contributions have been really invaluable to the board. So I was glad to see that was happening, so I could let people here know that Andrea was going to be rotating off to pursue some other things.
I'm sure we all agree and support the well-wishing.
Great. It doesn't have to be voted on, I'm sure.
Negative poll that as well.
I did notice that the medium level of conformance to the master plan on the recreation stewardship and the community connection, I thought that was a bit modest, just because, I was just at the Ranger Trailhead last week, and there was a chamber orchestra performing a concert, impromptu, free for the public, and then there was like an information station right there, and everybody was gathered around it, and it was just like, it seemed to me that that was a pretty strong community engagement and education on recreation. So, I just felt that way. I also wanted to alert the board to section F. Oh, shoot, it went away. In the financial section, FS.7 has verbiage. It's the only real discussion of land use in the master plan, and it has some useful verbiage on open space other, which is something that we sometimes look at. So if you didn't get a chance to read that, it kind of tells us how it ties into acquisition, open space other, land use designation.
The page number for that?
Oh, yes. It is on
157.
page number 157.
You got the whole thing memorized. It's amazing.
No, I haven't.
You do.
Yeah, so those were just things that I wanted to kind of highlight for us. Lupita mentioned out-of-the-box stuff, and I think that when I was looking at the paragraph that talked about the lack of standards with regards to service standards or that could inform our work in that area, it seemed to me like Boulder could set the standards. And if we had unlimited capacity, Boulder could probably write an amazing service standard for open space that the rest of the world could use. I know that's heaping on work, but I just thought that was kind of another area to think about. I think that's all I'll say right now. Thank you.
Cool. Anyone else would like to make some comments? Sarah?
So I'm not sure this comment will totally make sense, and I apologize in advance. So what struck me was that Chapter 3 of the Boulder Valley Comp Plan is very 03, 04, 07, 08 are very focused on protecting ecosystems, and the primary, or almost the very first message that you all provide in the introduction is that our natural ecosystems need our help now more than ever, and all the factors that drive that. And I just guess I want to put out a thought about when we talk about the financial components or tools that might be available to help address the challenges, that we think as creatively as possible. I realize, again, that's not our remit, that's City Council's remit, but it seems to me that there are really some creative things we could come up with, and maybe a regional project will help surface some of those, but I do think that would be a valuable ongoing discussion, so that both residents of the city and the visitors who use the system become stakeholders, not just users. And how we think about doing that, I think, could be a very creative process.
Great. Any other comments we want to make? Great. I'm going to go ahead and make the motion. I move that the planning board recommends the City Council acceptance of the Open Space and Mountain Parks Master Plan.
Second.
Cool. I don't want to speak to the motion. Do you want to speak to the motion? Speak to the motion, sorry.
I think I just did.
I think you just did? Great. I will, since it's a really nice short one, I'll actually say the motion out loud again. Chairperson Bowen recommended the City Council, made a motion to recommend the City Council for the acceptance of Open Space and Mountain Parks Master Plan, seconded by David Ensign.
Now it's the board's motion.
And now it's the board's motion. So does anyone else want to speak to it? Great. So I will go ahead and call the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. Do you have any of the instant? I didn't see your hand go up over there, so I was just making sure
I
that.
said aye.
Okay, cool.
Sorry.
I was making sure we had unanimous support, so congratulations, you get 2 in a row. And does anyone make a motion about the approval of the Boulder Valley Comp Plan, Open Space and Mountain Parks summary? Harmon does.
So I move that Planning Board approve the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, Open Space and Mountain Parks Master Plan Summary.
I'll second that. I'll do it again then, I guess. So Board Member Harmon Zuckerman has moved that the Boulder Valley, I'm just getting too silly with this whole thing, Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, Open Space and Mountain Parks Master Plan Summary, seconded by Bowen. Now it's the board's motion. Anyone want to speak to it? Great. I will go ahead and call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Cool. None opposed. So that passes unanimously again. Great. Thank you, guys. And I'm glad we got you out of here at 7:13 instead of 1:13.
Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe that is everything we have on our agenda for this evening, unless anyone has matters to bring up. Do you guys have any matters from staff? No? Great. Chris? John, you have something to say?
Yeah, last time I inquired under matters of Mr. Meschuk about the Google office complex, and I think he has something to tell us about that.
Sure, yeah, at the last meeting, John asked a question about the multi-use paths near the Google development and the construction that's occurring, so we were able to follow up on that. And they do have permits from the city for some temporary closures for construction safety in that area. So our right-of-way inspectors are monitoring that, and as soon as those are no longer needed, those temporary closures will be removed.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Chris, for following up on that. Appreciate it. Okay, if we have nothing else going on tonight, then I'm going to go ahead and adjourn our meeting, unless you guys want to talk for another 4 or 6 hours. We're good? Okay, great. Good. Night, everybody.
Wow.
Night.
Wow.
That was the shortest meeting I've been to.
Yeah, I think so too.
Live from Paris, on France 24.